Hi, this is Michael Uslan. You're listening to Batman on Film.
I'm vengeance.
I have given a name to my pain.
The Batman.
Always waiting for some Batman to save you.
It's simple. We kill the Bat of Gotham. I'm Batman.
Hello, Bat family, and welcome to this episode number 195 of the Batman on Film podcast. BOF is a sponsor and a proud member of the Batman Podcast Network. Check out all of the shows over at batmanpodcastnetwork.com and follow us on Twitter at BatPodNetwork. I'm Garett Grev. You can follow me on Twitter at Garett Wado and email me topics, suggestions, feedback at garrett.grev@batmanonfilm.com. Thank you for listening. And we've been saying it for months now. No, actually, we've been saying it for years. The Batman is coming. And now, dear listeners, the Batman has arrived. Hopefully, if you're listening to this podcast, you've already seen the movie, and you may have even listened to the two previous podcast entries on this feed of the BOF Social Hour dedicated to covering it. One, spoilers, for if you haven't seen it, you can not listen to that one. You can avoid that one. You can listen to the first one on the feed, which was spoiler free. Well worth your time. I didn't ruin anything, but go see this movie. What are you doing, man? If you like Batman so much, you've subscribed to a Batman podcast and you're like, well, let's see how it does on the second weekend. Nah, man, just go see that thing. Just go. You'll hear us talk about it a lot tonight. I bet it's worth your time, so hit pause, come back, listen to me later. But for this episode, I'm going to jump on my motorcycle. I'm going to race into the heart of the city, down a hidden entrance to a stately tower. I'm going to park in the basement. I'm going to wash the eye black off my face, and I'm going to discuss the most anticipated movie of 2022 and the number one box office smash, The Batman. However, this Gotham, where this Batman lives, it's a grim, dark, and scary place. If you've listened to this show before, I'm a tender sort. If you're joining me for the first time, guess what? I'm kind of a wuss about scary stuff. So I brought two of my closest pals along down into the cave to discuss with me. And at first, I'm going to welcome Ryan number one. Maybe you can guess which Ryan this is from my description. He is the master of Mountain Dew flavor variants. However, over this previous weekend, I watched him throw away a Mountain Dew that he got out of a gas station soda machine because it was just too strong. The mix was too strong. It was like all syrup, and this guy couldn't take it. He's the librarian of the Batman Book Club. He is the man whose pecs fill out a T Public podcast shirt better than anyone else I've ever seen, and he can actually bounce them up and down one at a time. And if you could guess it off this last clue, I'm a little bit creeped out. He was my roommate at the BOF watch party. Yes, that's BOF senior contributor, Mr. Ryan Lauber. Ryan, welcome to the program, sir.
Thank you, Garrett. Wow, what an intro. I wouldn't have anybody else give me that kind of intro, but you've seen all sides of Ryan Lauber in person now. So.
Oh boy, you spend a weekend in a suburb outside Dallas, sharing a hotel room together. You get bonded. You get
and this would be a compliment to you because usually I wouldn't let anybody see me in my weak state. And yeah, it was a strong Mountain Dew, and I was not ashamed in front of you and these other Bat Boys, including the guests that you're about to introduce, to say, guys, this is too much for me. I'm not strong enough for this. I got to toss this in the trash.
I'm a little guy, and they put the diesel in this, and they didn't even mix it up right. It's just straight sugar and caffeine and green food diet number 5. Well, Ryan, thank you for joining. I know you've seen this thing about 17 times, so you're going to be an excellent guest at this point. other guest for the evening, also named Ryan. It wouldn't make much sense because I said there were two Ryans involved. So I'm like, and welcome Steve.
Hey, Steve.
Like, what?
Hey,
You really
man.
threw. It was a weird misdirect, Garrett. Why'd you do that? This fella, he's the third Super Mario brother in my heart, at least.
Mm-hmm.
He is the pastry chef of the sweet but also healthy treat. He is the National Video Game Museum in Frisco, Texas, #1 fan. And he is the winner of the 2022 Rob Lowe Lookalike Contest. BOF senior contributor, Mr. Ryan Haas. Ryan,
Yo.
also welcome, my friend. How are you?
Good. I'm glad I'm not Steve. It's like, here's Ryan number 2, Steve.
Yeah. And Frank, welcome in.
Glad I'm not Steve.
Now, Lauber and I got to bond over, cohabitating for the weekend. But Haas, I felt like you and I got to bond over like trying to do the slightly diet healthy version of indulging in.
Yeah, it was kind of an interesting little dance we did. We danced with the devil in the pale moonlight for that,
Right.
didn't we?
You
We're like,
go
here's an apple. Let's get some. What
Oh,
we're gonna
man.
eat later.
I had a couple back-to-back apples at one late night as my post midnight 2 a.m. snack. That was outstanding. You go to the original Pancake House, and Haas and I are the only ones looking at the what's the egg bread, gluten-free, grain-free bread alternative?
Right. The cloud bread.
Cloud bread.
Egg white bread.
Cloud bread eggs Benedict. Haas, are you looking at that?
Yeah.
I was. It looks good. Grain-free or paleo.
It's just whipped egg
gluten-free
whites that
pancake.
turns into bread. It's like
Yeah.
barely any calories.
Man,
I
I commend both of you because you had me and the brothers Vera just slamming all the menu down our
Oh, my
gullets,
goodness.
and you guys are trying to be very responsible and healthy. So
Mikey
well
gave me some grief for not clearing my plate and eating all of my cinnamon roll that one day, and I was like, dude, that was a giant cinnamon roll. I couldn't do it.
on.
Well, listeners, if you're hearing us just jibber jabber on about this past weekend, it's because we had an excellent time. And yes, you have ascertained correctly. Look at you guys, world's greatest detectives, that we all were hanging out. And we were hanging out at the Batman on Film watch party for the Batman. And I know, Lauber, you were on the most recent social hour, which took place after the watch party. And you and Bill talked about it a little bit. This is the type of thing, and if you're new, if you found the Batman on Film podcast because you were looking for a review about the Batman, but you're not familiar with the site, you're not familiar with the podcast, or you kind of our fellow podcast or the Bat Pod Network, and you're just hearing about us now, like this is why Batman on Film's awesome, because the team that writes and podcasts for the site, along with editor-in-chief Bill Jet Ramey, got together down just outside of Dallas to watch this movie together last weekend, along with like a bunch of listeners and readers of the site and fans of the character. And it was a fantastic time. I know Bill talked about the gumbo on the episode you were on already, Lauber, but man, did Bill and announcer Rachel really put out a spread and opened up their home. You got to kind of be in on the team. So if you just found the podcast, you're like, holy crap, if I listen to this podcast, I can go over to this dude's house and hang out with him and his wife and eat their gumbo. Nah, I mean, maybe one day. I mean, that's kind of how it started for all of us at one point, but you got to put in your time. But you can,
if you're real lucky, you might get Rick Shue to make you some ribs.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah. Lauber took not mashed potatoes. Lauber took a shot at the ribs and then dialed it back, because although they were not Texas barbecue, they were actually really tasty ribs.
Yeah, they were. And I wanted Rick to drink it in. I'm like, man, this is a very rare thing. I'm going to compliment you. Okay.
I know. You were
this isn't going to happen again.
I'm going to give Rick a compliment. I don't know. You think he can handle it?
Yeah. Well, and then, but what you certainly can do is meet us out at a bar and hang out and talk Batman for a few hours.
We're a good time.
Meet and greet. I think we're fantastic.
We're a good time.
And then go watch the movie together, and then go to another bar and order a bunch more fried food and talk. It's great. It's great. Yeah. So we had a lovely time. Thanks to the editor-chief and announcer Rachel for having us at the house. Let's get into the news, boys, with all sorts of stuff going on. And then I want to make sure the bulk of this conversation is focused on the Batman. dear listeners, we know there are a ton of podcasts out there right now focused on the Batman. As we already said, some of them are on this very feed. But we want to keep kind of a sort of topical based, snappy conversation about the movie. Where you're not going to get a recap of the movie out of us tonight. We're going to kind of go point by point with some good discussion. So you definitely will need to have seen the movie, not just to avoid spoilers, but because we're not going to give you the overview of the plot.
We're going to jump over. We're not going to do an hour spoiler wall and do,
right.
We got all the other shows that Garrett already mentioned that cover all that. So we're gonna do the appropriate thing and just spoiler it up here.
That's great. That's a great way to frame it up, Haas. But before we do that, let's get into the news.
3, 2, 1.
Cue music. Cue Becky.
Good evening.
Okay, so guys, did you know this thing's made some money? I mean, I know we were sitting there together on Sunday and news was coming in. You know, Sunday there's the box office estimates of how they think a movie has performed through the weekend. But then the numbers got updated. And then the domestic box office came in, or sorry, the global box office numbers came in outside of domestic. And then those got updated. And by the time things were said and done, Monday numbers came in and they were north of 10 million bucks on a Monday. Mm-hmm. And then Tuesday numbers came in.
And that one was crazy, right?
And they were north of 10 million bucks on a Tuesday. Woo-hoo. A lot of times after a movie opens, if it's not connected to, say, Christmas break or, you know, maybe in the summer, you would anticipate that Tuesday number to be about half of what that Monday number was, for sure. And that didn't happen. People are coming to see this movie in droves with an A- cinema score and not a lot of competition. This bad boy's raking in the bucks. And as the editor-in-chief likes to say, they're forming a conga line down in Burbank. I wanted to say that on a podcast for so long. But this thing's racking up the bucks. I'm not sure what it's going to look like this next week. I mean, the second week after an opening, you know, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. But I don't know, Haas, if you had to wager a guess, I know we're not box office prognosticators, but we're actually better than some people who are paid to write articles about guessing what box offices are.
Weird?
Isn't that weird? If you had a sort of, you know, lick your thumb, stick it in the air, what do you think the second week's going to look like? Your second weekend?
Oh, it's hard. It's hard. I'm a bad box office guy. I'm not prepared for this. So
give me this one. Is it going to make more than half of what it made last week, opening weekend, or less than half of what it made the last weekend?
I would say slightly more than half. I hope it makes slightly more than half, which if it did would mean that's better than most movies.
Yes, better than most front-loaded blockbusters for sure.
Yes, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, hopefully, enough of a result will happen to where it won't be this giantly front-loaded movie, which should indicate that the movie's going to have a little bit of legs to it, which seems to be the case so far with the preview screenings and the weekend and like the holds we've seen, like Monday and Tuesday, like. Isn't like the best Tuesday after in a March or something? Like it's really crazy. Like I just saw the movie tonight and it was a 80% packed theater, you know, and that's not
what I like to hear.
And we're recording. I don't remember if I mentioned it at the top of the show. We're recording this on March 9th, 2022. It's a Wednesday. So you saw it tonight on a Wednesday with an 80% full theater.
Yeah.
I saw it Tuesday night with an 85% full theater at about an 8:30 showing. So even a little bit probably later, while you're on the East Coast time, whatever. I don't want to run the numbers, but you know, for evening showings midweek, people are showing up and they're showing up in pretty high numbers. Lauber, what do you think?
Yeah.
Give me the over under on 50% for weekend number 2.
Just so let's see, the 50% would be 67 then, because 134 divided by 2, 67 million.
Yeah.
Oh man, Like, I really was gonna say I think it would be 60 something million for the second weekend, but you didn't ask me the number. You said
right. It feels really like it could be really close,
I'm gonna
right?
say I think like it's gonna be hugging that 50%. So I'm gonna say under, but by under even like under 65 million.
Okay, so then we're talking about just over a 50% drop, which again would not
usually
be
that's
bad.
Good. Yeah.
Yep. For a blockbuster, they tend to be very front loaded, particularly existing IPs where they have a rabid fan base that's eager to go see it opening weekend. They're not sitting back and waiting for their neighbor or coworker to tell them it was good to go see it on weekend number 2.
It would be interesting. I wish I would have done the research here before we recorded to look at the weekends of Joker. Because I almost feel like that could maybe be a little comparable, because Joker was 90 something million, but was seen as a massive success, which it was, and ended up going 325 million overall domestic, $1 billion worldwide without China, I think it was, right? I think for that one. So I think that's a little comparable. I'd be really just curious what that second weekend would be. And I think we could be like, I think the Batman will definitely make, like 20 million more than Joker did.
So I think it's a good point, Lauber. And to be fair, I didn't tell you we were going to talk about this on the podcast.
Didn't.
So you
just thrown it at us. I love it. Yeah.
I mentioned we were going to talk about the box office. You didn't know you were going to get a pop quiz hot shot.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think the Joker thing makes sense, because although this isn't an R-rated movie, it was marketed very similar to an R-rated movie. Even though there were a couple of youngins in my theater last night, I don't think this is I haven't heard anyone talk about theaters being packed full of kids. Fairly, the A- cinema score, I think it's even better than what people realize based on how unique of a take and approach to the subject matter it is, that it was good enough that audiences were like, heck yeah, I really like this. Because that's what an A- is. A- is I really like this, even though it's pretty intense at some parts and it's a little bit more jarring. You know what, guys? I think this thing is going to, I'll kind of flip it the other way around. I think it'll hold at about 56% performance, 54% performance of the opening weekend for a 46% drop. And at a 46% drop, people are going to be very, very, very happy. Once again, we are not professional box office prognosticators, but we've seen some people fall flat on their faces recently when it comes to this title. So there's no reason to doubt us more than you would trust others on this.
Just another guess in the hat.
Some big whiffers out there. Okay. Reviews are strong, right? This is holding steady. This is a certified fresh Rotten Tomato type situation, and it's not going anywhere, correct? Like, there enough reviews are in, there's no risk of that dropping at this point from the last I saw, which says something. I think sometimes too, you get some of these when studios are doing, early viewings for fans, you see the audience score spike and then come down with general. A lot of times some of the critics they know are going to be in their wheelhouse, and I'm not buying into all the conspiracy stuff, but there is some of this where you let some critics get a look at it, and then some of those scores are nicer, and then they level down. That hasn't happened with this one, so people seem to be enjoying it, both in the audience and those writing about it. It's very nice, and we know people are happy with this in Burbank in that conga line, because we've gotten some confirmed news today, just breaking today, in Matt Reeves' Batverse around Ryan Lauber. Which character am I talking about that our main man up in Jersey, Peter R. Vera, is going to be very excited about? Who got the big break?
Take it easy, sweetheart.
I got you.
I got you. How you doing?
Yeah, that's right. It's Oz Cobblepot, the Penguin. Woo. Series officially confirmed in the talks, right? For a while, there have been rumors that this was going to be the case, but when it hits the trades, you can take it to the bank, particularly if it's something like the Hollywood Reporter, which ran the story today. And the quote is, The world that Matt Reeves created for the Batman is one that warrants a deeper gaze through the eyes of Oswald Cobblepot. This is Colin Farrell in his statement. I couldn't be more excited about continuing this exploration of Oz as he rises through the darkened ranks to become the Penguin. Ah, boy. This feels like fan fiction almost, right? Like, I remember I mentioned Peter because I remember him having conversations about this. I remember us having conversations off mic about it. Like, wouldn't it be great to see a crime drama like the rise of this mob boss, the Tony Soprano version of the Penguin here? What's there not to be thrilled about of this Penguin?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, despite, of course, story matters always, but in a movie where it was just stellar performances all around, there was an extra bolt of electricity, jolt of electricity whenever Colin Farrell's Penguin was on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I just thought that guy,
it's a magnetic performance.
He was so good in that movie as Penguin. So a series, because remember the earlier rumors was like, hey, they're thinking of a Penguin series, and it was like, well, it's Colin Farrell as Penguin, right? Like, it's going to be this Penguin, right? Like, that was and then once it was kind of like, yeah, it's going to be Colin Farrell. It's like, well, then I don't care what the series is about. It's Colin Farrell as Penguin. I'm in.
100%. And when you get, I think it is just such a crazy world that we live in. Yeah. You know, and Colin Farrell, I saw some people, I'm really bagging on a certain box office writer on this episode. It wasn't my intent, but I've seen, besides this dude who I'm not going to mention, I've seen other people recently call Colin Farrell sort of like a B-list movie star. Yeah, it's happened. Which he isn't. I mean, he's not always going to be the leading man in every single thing. This is Colin Farrell we're talking about. This is a darn good actor who has been above the title on a number of major motion pictures. And this is not, 15 years ago where these dudes didn't do TV shows, right? Like, this is part of the streaming renaissance.
Such TV, it's HBO Max.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. That's right. Yeah. It's incredible that the amount of talent that's getting poured into these series where you got this, and it's not just Colin Farrell, right? Because getting the actor is one thing, but think about the production level to do the prosthetics and the makeup and, to set it in this same world. Like, all of that tells me it's a higher level of television production quality. And we I don't know how many times I hear it on every podcast I listen to around the subject matter. We're in a golden age. So Haas, do you feel the same way? Can they just do anything here and you're going to be showing up, or is this particular thought of the rise? Now you've seen the movie, right? And you know the ending. Does that pull you in anymore, or is dealer's choice?
So for the movie, The Batman, I was cautiously optimistic pretty much the entire time until I sat down and watched the movie. And now that I've seen the movie, I am on board with whatever they do next. And I do trust that they'll do something cool and amazing, because now Matt Reeves is in control, and he's got this deal with HBO Max, with his production company. So there will be that executive oversight by him. I wouldn't obviously be surprised if he writes an episode or directs some of the episodes, just kind of like we've seen with Peacemaker and James Gunn. You've got Colin Farrell on board, and he's already fleshed this character out. And so now you're going to be able, and it seems like it could be a quasi sequel to the Batman. Yeah. Like, if it takes place after this, it's going to fill in some blanks. And so they'll be able to kind of, I don't want to say that they'll plant deliberate seeds for whatever the Batman sequel would be, but they'll definitely be able to continue shaping the world and adding things in that either didn't fit in the first movie, or things that they know won't fit, didn't fit in that one or won't fit in a sequel.
Yeah, it feels like it's definitely, I don't know, I guess this is probably not the most perfect analogy, but I remember when I was a kid and the Star Wars prequels were coming out, and there'd be like a big fat hardcover novel that would be set in between each movie that you certainly didn't need to read to go from, episode 1 to episode 2 or episode 2 to episode 3. But if you were a nerd like I was, and you wanted to read it it was really fun, and it helped sort of you get from point A to point B. It feels, in my mind, this kind of feels like that, only, you know, it's live action. You film it and you can actually sit down and watch it here. That's not the only thing that's going on in television. We had heard bits and pieces of this before about a Gotham City GCPD television program, a little bit more of a police procedural. And I think this was mentioned. Lauber, am I right in remembering that this was going to be a prequel to the Batman at one point? Okay.
Yeah, the Batman takes place in year 2. This was going to be year 1. It was going to track a cop like through the GCPD, and
it's like a corrupt cop.
Corrupt cop, and test him and see. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. I did not hear that many details. I feel like I missed something. But that's no more. So anyway, what has this? Matt Reeves was on a podcast talking about, you know, the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, where he talks about, you know, sort of what changed with some creative differences around what was going to happen with that show, but what it's turning into. And this isn't hit the trades, but it's been Reeves talking about how this is kind of turning into and evolving into a Arkham TV show, which is really interesting. He says it's almost, I think the quote is here, again, it's an origin that you would almost leaning into the idea of, it's like a horror movie or a haunted house that is Arkham. The idea of, again, the way that Gotham is a character in the movie, I really want Arkham to exist as a character. And I mean, Lauber, you played the same video games I have, right?
Yeah. I think so. Turtles, Mario, Batman, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but if it's those 3, it's covered. And particularly if it's Batman and it's in the Arkham universe, I think about, and I'm not expecting it to be fantastical as what we saw in Batman Arkham Asylum, but Arkham is traditionally a character to its own and gets portrayed kind of its own beast in most iterations. Do you have, spitballing here, we'll do a full podcast on, you know, what do we think could happen? We'll fan fiction this stuff. What do you think Arkham looks like? We got a brief glimpse, but what do we think? Or was that Blackgate? They're in Blackgate, right? What do you think Arkham looks like?
No, they're in Arkham.
Well, there you go. What's the rest of it? I think
Falcone was going to go to Blackgate.
There, bingo. Thank you. That's why you've seen it. That's why you've seen it 4 times and I've seen it twice.
No, what do I think it looks like on the outside? Well, I think that it was very smart of Matt Reeves to lay the foundation a little bit, but not pin themselves in a corner to where they can do. There's kind of no restrictions for what they want to do with Arkham on like its looks and stuff, you know, because we didn't get much of it to look at in the movie. So I can't see it not fitting in a little bit of like a gothic kind of architecture.
It's still going to be creepy, right? It doesn't need to be or supernatural.
No, I don't think it needs to be supernatural. Maybe it gives them the ability to play with just a little bit more fantastical, you know, maybe. I have no clue. Maybe. But as far as like you just asked me what's it going to look like. I'm just picturing I'm just picturing kind of like a gothic looking
big spires
building. Yeah. And that's what I would love to see that, especially if they want to do like a haunted house sort of deal, you know, like American Horror Story. Garrett, I know you never watched that.
Too spooky. too spooky for me. I'm
the second season was Asylum, it was a very scary like asylum, and it's like, man, that's what I would love to see for Arkham Asylum. So I hope that's kind of what they do with this.
You would, you big creeper.
Yeah, I'm a creeper. I apologize.
Right. Like your horror movie.
Yeah. We also got some movie news. There's an article up on Batman on Film. You can reference that if you'd like. There was also, I think Deadline ran a pretty big story on it, but there's some fairly big shakeups to the Warner Brothers DC slate of films.
What?
Yeah, I don't know. Did you not hear?
Heard this? It was a bloodbath today.
A bloodbath.
That was my best
gonna be
description. Just like an online bloodbath.
Don't go on Twitter. The nerds are having a hard time.
Can't celebrate a WB victory for too long, you know?
No, man. They don't get it.
Why would they
Burn it
do
down.
this? Right after
Why would they do this to us? I mean, it hurts me personally. I mean, don't they know? I just said I'm tenderhearted. Why would they possibly do this to the fans? Well, it turns out there's probably a few different reasons, but we got a shakeup. And the good news, dear listeners, if you want to get my take on it, and hopefully you do, because otherwise, why the heck listen to this? There's still a whole bunch of DC movies coming out this year. And my hunch, we'll call it my hunch, is none of this stuff happens in the same way if the Batman wasn't like locked in as a huge financial hit. This thing, they're not worried about making their bank in 2022 at this point. They've got some good movies on the slate to come. This thing looks like it's going to play out nice. So if you can allow your directors a little more time, especially like a huge director that's delivered $1 billion hit for you like James Wan, if you can give him a little time to work on the back end post-production and not stress him out and burn him out, and maybe now he doesn't want to come back for a third one because gosh, these timelines are tight and I can't do everything I want to do. Why not? If you know that you've made a bunch of money in 2022, you could get a good jump start to make a bunch of money in 2023. Guess what? That's only going to make Warner Brothers more happy with making DC movies. So like, take a breath, if you need to chat it out, man, hit me in the DMs. I'll talk you through my thoughts. I get, Lauber, I don't know. It's natural for people to be disappointed.
Exactly.
Were you upset? Because there's a difference between being disappointed and being upset. I'm particularly talking about some of the upset I've seen today that I think is silly, but
I
maybe I'm
love
wrong.
that I have a personal reporter in one Ryan Haas who was just feeding me all this stuff, and it happened very quickly. So it really was like, oh wow, well maybe not.
I put my phone down today.
Check yourself.
It was ridiculous.
Check yourself, Lauber.
Everybody needs
check yourself. Here's this one.
Everybody needs a Haas in their group text
They
group
do.
of friends because it was nice.
He was on it. He was on it.
Man, I can actually get my
felt like my
overtime.
old self for 5 seconds today.
To try and give you a quick answer though, Garrett, and honestly, this is purely how I feel. I just got a Batman movie that was even better than my expectations. The rest of this
Spoilers.
the rest of this year, anything else was just like
Gravy.
I said before, it was gravy, but in my case, it was dew.
Sure.
I kind of just like whatever we get, awesome. If they're getting delayed, but not even all of them are necessarily getting like. It's not going to have DC content later this year. I am. So I'm like, okay, cool. And also the Batman's going to be still in theaters for a little while. And then it's going to be streaming, then physical release. I'm just like, it's fine. And yeah, then we saw later on that James wanted, he'd made a comment to the Collider guy and saying that he was really like, he just finished, shooting 2 months ago.
2 months ago. And now we have more time to actually do
he had less than a full
special
year
effects.
to complete his movie, and the first one he had I think over a year to complete post-production. So it's like he wanted a little bit more time, and it's like, okay, like you need a little more time to be fully satisfied with the product rather than a rush job incomplete. Yes sir,
100%.
take your time. And so maybe I was underreacting to all of it, but I just kind of laughed and I was like, okay. But that's kind of really how it was in the end, because we're not entitled to get this stuff either. Of course we can be disappointed. Change and a delay, a natural reaction is in disappointment is anger. I think they go hand in hand. So I do get it to an extent. And I'm not pinpointing anybody specifically, but you came across the reactions of, there was some that was like, it's okay, calm down. Nobody took your house, your kids, your dog, your cat. Like it's gonna be okay in the end. It's fine. It's
you better not take Ryan Lauber's cat. I watched this.
He's meowing right now at the door.
I watched this guy FaceTime this
daily
cat
FaceTime
from Texas.
FaceTimes. I got to FaceTime with.
Wait just a second, live.
Oh, he's got to be on the show.
I hope you heard him. Okay, carry on. Sorry, still going.
Haas, we as a fellow father of youngins. Yes. I got the multiple. You just got the one for now. So it's a little bit less expensive to get to the movies for you.
True.
DC League of Super Pets is on July 29th. Minor change there. Are you hyped for this one?
Yeah, we saw the trailer on the IMAX fan screening, and I was pretty impressed. I knew about it, obviously from Fandom last year, and I was like, okay, whatever. Of course I'll watch it. But then seeing this trailer, it was just cool and funny, and then I was like, oh yeah, I have a kid. I'm totally going to see this
for the kid,
of course, for the kid. Because when Teen Titans Go to the Movies came out, I didn't take her. I don't think she was born then.
For shame.
No, she might have been really young.
She was.
Yeah, that's true.
Either if she what year did that movie come out? Was it
17?
I think it was 18.
Oh,
18. If it was 18, she might have been less than 1 year old. So yeah.
Okay.
But she's seen it since then, and she loves that Teen Titans. And I remember how great that was to see in the theater. So yeah, she's just getting into the seeing movies in the theater age, especially because the pandemic shut so many movies out. That'll be a really cool one to go see. We're gonna go see Sonic next month. And yeah, the Super Pets will be a totally other one. She loves superheroes and she loves pets, and so that's perfect for a kid and her dad that likes Batman.
It is great. And you know what? So we'll keep moving on this one. I think for me, and I hope people take this to heart, enjoy. Things are so much better when you enjoy what you're getting.
Goodness.
And instead of decrying what you're not getting. And in this case, it's not even what you're not getting. It's what you're just going to have to wait for a little bit. And in the act of waiting, you're probably going to get a better product that you'll enjoy even more.
How long do we have to wait for this Batman movie?
Oh my gosh, so long. And then the fact that Warner Brothers is going to be well on their way to a very financially successful 2023, thanks to DC movies, means they are likely going to want to stay engaged in the act of making DC movies for a long time. So I understand the disappointment. I really hope I wasn't too pejorative with my description. I'm sure I was, because sometimes I'm just insensitive. But it's cool, man. And woman, dudes, ladies, whatever, children of all ages. I don't know. Where there's cool stuff. Just go along for the ride. Try not to get freaked out about it, because guess what? Nobody outside of fringe groups on social media and Twitter, and that includes me and Ryan and Bill and all our other pals. We're all a part of that fringe group. I'm not looking down on anybody. No one outside of those circles cares, and that's the vast majority of the audience. So people are going to enjoy these things. It's not going to, throw the train off the tracks. And guess what? Buried the lead before, but you're getting Shazam: Fury of the Gods earlier than you thought. And it's got to be a little more patient for Flash and Aquaman, which they're going to have more time in post. So, all right. That's the news. There was tons of it, boys. I said I wanted to keep this a snappy episode, but look at us go.
I'm sorry. It's my cat's fault.
I love that cat. Don't you ever apologize. Let's head to the main event.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Ready to move out.
Okay, guys. So the Batman, as I said, he's arrived. He came in fast. Actually, at the end, it came in faster than I realized. I was so used to waiting a very long time for this movie that the last few weeks until it got here, kind of sped up on me. I don't know if that was the true. I know for a lot of people, it's like, oh my gosh, really? It was like every single minute felt like an eternity. But it felt like to me, when Bruce dove off the top of that gargoyle in the squirrel suit, just zipping away until all of a sudden I smacked right into it. And it was the go-to weekend. And now, I'm in a theater and oh my gosh, it didn't hurt getting crashed into underneath a bridge and off the top of a semi and into some garbage cans would hurt. It was a much more enjoyable experience for me than that. But it really did land with that big of an impact. I want to talk about impact a little bit, and let's start in an unusual way. I would like to talk about your emotional experiences when you watched the movie and the emotional impact it had on you. I will share the emotional impact on me after you guys go. I'm an overshare. I've demonstrated it multiple times, so don't worry about letting it all go. And I want to start with you, Haas. What kind of emotional impact did this film have on you?
I mean, I totally judge movies in general based off of my emotional response. And I have said this on podcasts before. This is not news. So like I think probably the last time I mentioned this on one of these shows was probably for Wonder Woman 84. And people had a lot of things to say about that movie. And I kept saying, dude, I reacted emotionally to a lot of things in that movie, and I really enjoyed that movie. And so that to me means it was a good movie. So my bar is even higher for Batman films, and the Dark Knight trilogy hit those emotional Batman fan spots a lot. And this movie, Matt Reeves' The Batman, is no different. And I was hoping that would happen based off of Reeves saying from square one that he was going to take Batman on an arc and have this emotional journey and stuff like that. But I didn't know what to expect. And I had tried to keep my expectations in check. But my first cue was when the soundtrack started getting released, and we heard that track for Batman Suite, and it starts out with the main theme that we've heard in the trailers the whole time, and then all of a sudden it goes in this more heroic sounding theme, and that was my first indicator of, oh, there's going to be something really different happen in this film, and I can't wait to see what that is. And yeah, so there's like a handful of moments in the movie that really touched my bat heart. The scene with Alfred, the scene with where Batman and Selina talk on the rooftop with the bat signal, where she asks him, where she kisses him for the first time. That's a really poignant scene. And of course the end of the film, with the flare. I mean, it is just so crazy to have this like arc work in the film, to me, that it's you go from vengeance to hope, and the way that it's told through visuals too was just so well done. And seeing it 4 times so far, those beats hold up so well. Oh, and the scene with Bruce and Alfred, that one gets me every time. It's crazy how well that's done. And I just think it's a strength of the storytelling and the acting. It all works really well. And so this movie is ranking pretty high for me in terms of emotional connection.
Was there for you for sure. Okay. Yes. You said something I want to touch on, but Lauber, you hit me with it first. How did it hit you in the field, my man?
It hit me well, and I'll keep mine quick because I keep going on long ones. Just the great vibes throughout, up until that Batmobile revving up. First viewing and every time since that first viewing, I was sitting next to Mira, and I started smiling and getting extremely giddy. I just loved that buildup of that Batmobile. And then in taking off and that chase and everything up until the very end, when he kneels and looks down in the car at Oz, like that on one level was just like, oh my God, this is great. The from him crashing through in the third act, the window, and for like the next 5 minutes of beating ass, similar kind of emotion of just like, I love this. And then it didn't hit, for some reason it was the first viewing, but then viewings 2, 3, and 4 really hit me on his big arc after the I'm Vengeance realization. And he snaps into hero mode for like the next 2 minutes, 3 minutes, maybe even, from when he, you guys know what part I'm talking about. He grapples over, cuts the cord, falls, rises, the flare, and then helping the woman as she's lifted in the helicopter out. That's like 3 minutes, 4 minutes. That hits on a totally different level of like, he's a hero. You know what I mean? Like that part hit me in a different way, but just as hard too.
You guys touched on something I wanted to get it into later, but we'll do it now. And I'll talk about how I'm a big baby along the way. So don't worry about that. You didn't just expose yourself to the world only me to be like, haha, losers, sweet emotions.
Oh boy.
I was not prepared, and I had not gone as deep on this movie as I have on a number of other movies that, you know, this is my subject matter. These are my people, and I'm going to read every single little bit. So I had not read every little bit and every little article about Reeves talking about the arc. I knew he said it was important, that it was personal. I knew that he said he had an idea for the story he wanted to tell. I was not prepared for Bruce to be like aching, exposed, raw, unformed, damaged Bruce for so much of the movie. And every time you see him make human connection, it's like somebody who's doing something they don't know how to do for like the second or third time, where you can tell he's playing it like, I had recognized what a person would do in this situation, but I don't really know how to do it well. Even from the beginning scene where the man was being assaulted by the gang, and I don't know if they're supposed to be Joker people or what the deal is.
Right. He doesn't know how to respond to the guy he
doesn't
saves.
know how to respond to the guy he saves. He looks at the little boy, and of course he's Bruce at the funeral at this point. But also he's Batman at the crime scene and doesn't know how to engage. I sensed the whole time that he had an emotional pull, but an inability to act. You see that with Alfred, right? They kind of have this cold relationship, and they don't interact directly. It's not real warm. It's not father son. It's something. It's like there's hurt there, and then like to watch him evolve. And when you get to that third act and he understands, I have to be something for people. This can't just be me. It can't just be my mission and my anger and my drive for vengeance, because look what vengeance gets us. This has to be how I help and make an impact. It's not just scaring and beating the hell out of people, but it's giving people hope. That's the real change. I was a blubbering mess. I'm sitting next to Rick Shue's wife on one side, and I'm sitting next to Javi Trujillo's 17-year-old kid on the other. And I'm like, I don't need this lady and this kid to see me this emotional.
God, get it together, man.
Together, Garrett. Yeah. I mean, I was slammed. And that was probably the third time that I got emotional through the movie. I thought, it's so raw and it's so personal, and even the way it's shot, right? Like there's a lot of tight shots either on Batman or Bruce or directly behind, sort of like, Haas, you're the video game guy, kind of like third person.
There's a lot of great, like, or even first person shots where, when he walks in the crime scene at the beginning of the movie, and when he and when they arrest Falcone at the end
on the motorcycle racing in.
That. Yeah. But I just love seeing those like shots through the crowd, and it's almost like you have Batman's POV where you're going through these things and you see the cops' reaction, or the people at the club's like reaction to like what's happening as Batman. It's pretty crazy.
It was for sure, hands down, by far. And I think most of us felt, Bruce's emotional situation in like The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. This was the most raw, personal, and up close Bruce Wayne I've ever experienced in anything out of like, some very, very elite storylines where I'm like, I feel like I'm on this journey with this dude and I'm in this very dark emotional place. And then to come out of it was like, just incredible. Dude says, I got to be a hero. And it's almost like a split second. He realizes it's this acknowledgement of, I've been doing this wrong and my impact hasn't been what it needs to be. All right, jump the hell off this bridge and slice this, power transformer so it doesn't electrocute everybody below. And I don't know if I'm going to live or die. But just like, okay. And then he's helping people, out in the daylight and helping little kids and, being delicate and careful. And you never saw that. And it left me in such a place. Lauber, you asked me after I got the movie, because you guys had seen it already like twice, right? When I saw it my first time, like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I don't think I can talk about it yet, because I was just
told me to shut up. Don't ask me that
Lauber.
question.
Man, I need like 3 beers and some chicken wings before I'm ready to talk about this thing. So needless to say, we all felt what they were putting down on this one, correct?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yep. Correct.
All right. So now that we got this out of the way, what was the emotional response? I want to talk about like fears and emotion. I think a lot of people, and when they talk about this movie, I was certainly prepared for this to be the scariest Batman movie I had ever seen. And you guys know, if you've been listening for a while, I don't always like to be
I think
scared.
you took your blankie with you in the theater,
Yeah,
I
call it my binky. Thank you very much.
Your
Ryan.
binky. Yeah.
Lauber, since you're Mr. Horror here, I'm going to start with you. What did you think about the scary factor of this movie, and what was the scariest part for you?
Scariest part for me definitely was when the mayor was in his house and he took a step to his right and the Riddler was right behind him.
Boy, oh boy.
Big
what a way
eyes,
to start. What a way to start.
Not moving. He wasn't moving, but his eyes just were, and and it cut in close on him as he's following him back and forth. I think, no, not like, jumped out of my seat scary, but just like the creep factor there was like, whoa. Dude.
The way you responded, do you have an answer different than this one? And if it's this one, let's okay. So mine's the same. So let's chop it up on this one just a little bit. I thought Batman was watching who turned out to be the mayor and his wife, and what I thought was a little ninja assassin who had just killed somebody right away. And then I'm like, oh, it's a family. Okay, it's Halloween. That's right. I knew
they're having a good time.
This must be an important person. Batman's watching, probably keeping him safe. And then all of a sudden, oh my gosh, the TV's reflecting off his glasses and he's in the shadows and it's horrifyingly uneasy. And then he leaps forward and makes that like
that sound.
I don't know if
it's like a screech or something.
It's a wail. I was like, okay, I don't want to watch this. It was very, very scary. Like that was intense. And then just the ferocity bashing that dude's head in. And then boom. Okay. And then straight into creep factor. So homeboy's dead. And Riddler's like, you know what I need to do? I got to mount this guy's back and breathe real heavy while I get the duct tape out. Kind of just like, oh man, that really set the tone for like, all right. I told you guys after I saw the movie, I'm covered in sweat. I haven't been untense in 3 hours. I need 3 beers and some wings. Like that was exactly where
it was a mess.
Okay. All right. So I'm with you, Haas. That opening, or sorry, Lauber, the opening, I did that all weekend too. That opening bit was a bit for me to handle. Haas, what was your scary?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's cool that, once you've seen the movie to be able to gauge other people's reactions when those scenes happen, because like my theater was tonight was very receptive when those moments happened, and they're just like, but for mine, I don't want to say scary, but the way the fear was used in the scene right after that, where you hear Bruce talking through his journal, and we hear about how fear is a weapon, and you see all of you track all the different kind of crimes going on in Gotham City, but then the bat signal comes out, and then everybody starts looking at the shadows, and you don't know if Batman is there or there or there. And then the way it's shot and the way the voiceover works and that score is just absolutely magnificent, the way it tracks it, and the way that entire first like 5 minutes all the way up until like you finally see Bruce, his actual face for the first time. That is it's one of the most well done. I hate to be hyperbolic and say it's the best Batman scene ever, but it's one of the best, most well done statements on that's the opening thesis of this movie that we have for Batman. I think like just to see his effect on the city and what he, at least at that point, what he thinks he's trying to do and what kind of change he's trying to cause in the city.
I think the movie did us, and Reeves is to be praised for this. Reeves does a great job of building tension. In The Dark Knight did a great job of building tension, but the Batman does it in a different way.
Yeah.
Where everything is tense. Like The Dark Knight, you didn't know what the Joker was going to do, right? The bank scene and the strings that just these strings are going to pop, and it's the shepherd's whatever that the sonic sort of, it sounds like the pitches just keep ascending forever. Shepherd's tone. This did it about like fear of what you don't see. And the shadow work in that scene was really effective. Like I was tense every time. I'm like, oh, Batman's in one of these shadows and it's going to come out. And I don't know why I'm scared. I'm not the criminal in this scene. Why am I afraid Batman's here? You know? And then, when Batman makes his entrance and you go from this tension of shadow, and the score is coming, and then the score kind of drops back and you hear his boots and the armor just like chunk.
And you know how that, what I love about that is, if you can hear Batman, it's because he wants you to hear him.
Oh yeah.
It's intentional. So he's intentional. Exactly. So, he's like, yeah, I'm coming out. I'm about to kick everybody's ass.
It didn't ring quite as fear to me, but man, I believed everybody in those scenes was super afraid. Okay. So that's the scariest moment. I want to go for the most Batman moment. What was the thing that happened? And if we cannot all pick one, that would be delightful. If we all end up talking about the same one, I could see a world where we all start talking about something towards the very end of the film. So it doesn't have to be true to character. It could just be visual. It could be, action scene, like, oh man, that's how I think Batman fought. But what rang true to you as a standout Batman moment in this movie, Mr. Ryan Lauber?
Oh man, to just pick one over the others. So rather than go through and explain, I'm just gonna
I said favorite. I shouldn't have. You can just something you'd like to highlight is just fine. I won't hold you to this as being your number one.
Rapid fire, coming out of the shadows, like you just said. What I said before of when he jumped off the rafters to save those people to cut the line, it was an instant boom. Let's group two together. Funny comments, but also very true of how he corrects in the holding cell. He corrects the chief who said, I have you for assaulting an officer. He says, actually assaulting 3, just quickly corrects him, as well as like with Gordon of, you should have held your punch. And Batman, just says, I did. The quickness of his comments like that, and he's not trying to be funny, and they're very matter of fact. It feels like that is the best kind of like Batman 2. And almost like it throughout the detectiving of, it's almost like I don't know which scene it is, but it's like he's sitting there, he's talking with maybe Gordon about something, and somebody's asking, what is, yada, yada. And it's almost like as a nuisance of like, this is the answer. It's that. Then he turns back to Gordon, sort of deal. It's like those are the smallest of moments. But to me, it's like, that to me is a consistency of how Batman like would act in these kind of situations. So I mean, it's like, it's such a combination. To me, there was not one absolute moment, but a bunch of different layers.
I love the one that you think you're mentioning in the murder scene when he walks in the first time and the forensic crime scene of the crime people are doing their thing and Batman stops and says he was alive when the thumb was severed. And they're like, what? He's like, endometriosis. What? Endometriosis around the wound. Like, it's just like, okay. And then back to the convo with Gordon. I'm like, I guess this dude's the world's best detective. We're seeing it here.
I loved him. I loved it when he, for the detective stuff where he finds like the thumb drive or URL. And those are just like really, it's almost Adam Westian, the way that they kind of could have come across, but it's Batman. It's this very Batman. And I'm so glad that he did get at least one, Batman disappears on Gordon without Gordon knowing moment, later on in the movie when they're in the Wayne orphanage, where, when they find out that Bruce Wayne's the target, he's like, oh, the next target's Bruce Wayne. And Gordon looks and he's like, where'd you go?
Yeah. Disappearing act. Haas, anything else you have to point out of a standout Batman moment for you?
All of those do. And then just in general, his interaction with Selina is just very, very good. You got a lot of cats. It works. A lot of that stuff works. And she is kind of for a guy that is like awkward. And like you said, Garrett doesn't know how to interact with people. He clearly has a thing for her. And there's a lot of moments throughout the movie where you can see on his eyes and in his face, like when he interacts with Selena, or like when she calls him via the lenses later on, he kind of is like, she's like, is there a place we can meet? And he's like, yeah. It, like, you could just see his look. It's as giddy as Batman could possibly look, but and still be Batman, you know. Like, he has this really goofy like look on his face, and it's
maybe I'm thinking too much into it. But when she reaches back out to him and he's sitting there, he sounds more Bruce than Batman when he's like, Selena. And then she responds, and then his tone changes and dips back to Batman.
Yeah,
exactly.
I agree. Like, she's breaking him down a little bit, or
a little bit, but it's like a little vulnerability there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
I noticed that too. I noticed it last night. I said, "Oh, I didn't notice him say Selena like that before."
He's got a crush.
Yeah. But you know what I noticed? I agree, Haas, and I'm actually going to talk a little bit about the interaction between Bruce and Selena that I thought was just really like, oh man, this is Batman right here. But particularly what you're saying, that vulnerability in the relationship between two of them, I've seen online, you know, not everybody always likes things as much as it sounds like the three of us like this, believe it or not, fellas.
That's
and one of the criticisms I saw is they said like the romantic connection between the two is forced and unbelievable. And I think Batman tells you himself why it's there. And I think there's something in Selena that not identifies with Bruce, but notices in Bruce when she says she has a thing for strays. I think that's Reeves telling us that Selena knows this is a broken dude. Like, something about him registers to her as, this is like a stray animal. And I feel for him in a way that I feel for these cats that don't have anyone to take care of them. Like, it's past the initial fight, right? They're kind of into it a little bit more, and she's seeing something. And if you watch the way there's 2 kissing scenes and there's almost a third, in the first 2, if you look at who kisses who, Selena kisses Batman both times. Batman's not mad about it. Batman gives her a little smoochy smooch right back.
Right.
No.
At the end of the movie, they almost kiss. Batman leans in. Selena doesn't go for it. What happens over the course of this movie? Batman's not a stray anymore. Batman's figured out his place. He's figured out how to evolve with his mission. He's a different Bruce.
Selena even almost says that.
Yep. Yeah. What does she say? You're taken already.
You're already taken.
You're already taken. Right. Like, and I think, I know she's, referencing he is Gotham's, but I think it's that he's changed in who he is. He's not lost in the same way he was. He's not a stray anymore. And that's shifted the dynamic a little bit, where it's Bruce looking for the old smoochy smooch and Selena's like, something's changed. It was not a total rejection. You can tell there's warm feelings there, but I think you're right, Haas. The interaction between the two of them is great. My most Batman moment, and holy geez, I was so glad it was there with every fiber of my bat beating heart, was I'll talk one more than the other. The first is, Gordon and Batman are going into the orphanage. Gordon pulls out his guns. He says, no guns. Gordon says, that's your thing. My next question, by the way, we're mentioned like 4 possible answers to the next question, so bear with me when we get to that. But the next one is Selena has got, broken nose cop, who's the mustache with the broken nose, tied. Yeah,
sorry. Yeah,
Mackenzie. No, you're right.
Mackenzie. Yeah,
and he is up on the roof, and she's like, I'm gonna kill this guy. He killed my friend, and then we're gonna go after Falcone. And she desperately wants to kill him, and he won't let her. And then she desperately wants to kill Falcone, and she says he has to pay, and he says, but you don't have to pay with him. You've already paid enough. Like, it means something to me that Batman won't go there. Right? Like, yeah. And I named a kid after Ben Affleck. Like, I'm not crapping on Affleck, right? But it means something to me to have the Batman on the big screen have that moral backbone, because that's the mission. If you don't have it, in my opinion, it's very tough to do the character. You can do a cool character, but it's very tough to do Batman. And Batman can lose his way. Sure. But if we're being introduced to a Batman that's like, yeah, kill the guy, that's cool. Or yeah,
year two shouldn't be that.
Shouldn't be there. And to have it so emotionally, poignantly put, you don't have to pay with him. You paid enough. If you kill, you pay, right? You suffer. You become that evil thing. And you're not that evil thing. Don't let it happen to you. Like, oh my gosh, that's Batman. Like, to my core. That was another, by the way, Garett. Like, waterworks, just a little bit point. All right, next question. We'll start wrapping it up. I got kind of two more I want to get through. I've seen some critiques, and there was a conversation in the Batman on Film Facebook group. Some people talking about, whether or not there was humor in this movie. I personally thought it was hilarious. Like,
plenty of,
So, Lauber, do you agree? Was there humor in this movie?
I think there was humor in this movie.
Haas, you think there's humor in the movie?
Yes.
I think there is humor in the movie. I'd like us all to share what you thought the funniest part was. Haas, was there a part that made you chuckle? And it can be dark humor. It can be, even if it's unintended. I think most of the stuff that even I saw people say they thought was unintended, but sort of rang as humorous to the audience was intended.
A lot of the ones we have already kind of talked about. A lot of these like cool little Batman moments.
We hit a lot of them on the last question.
A lot of them were there. And we've seen the movie many times in the theater at this point, and a lot of them make the audience visibly like chuckle along with it. The one that always gets the biggest response, which we haven't talked about yet, is the scene where Batman got knocked out and he wakes up in the GCPD, and then Batman and Gordon have to figure out how to get him out without getting, unmasked or arrested. And they're both locked in the room together for 2 minutes. And as soon as Gordon says, "We got to get you out of here, man." And Batman's like, "They'll put a lot of heat on you." And then as soon as Gordon says, "But if you punch me in the face," like as soon as he says,
"I love it,"
why don't you go punch me in the face? As soon as he says, "Punch me in the face," that everybody starts erupting with that. And then of course, the follow-up to that is the whole, "You could have pulled that punch." I did.
So good. I agree. I laughed, and my audience last night laughed at that one too. That was a good chuckle on both of them. Other Ryan, Mr. Lauber,
biggest chuckle for the sake of something different. That usually gets a laugh, but so does, what is this? Good cop, batshit cop.
Oh my gosh,
that one gets it every time. And then also
they know habla español. That one gets people too. Like
the
butchered that.
But then it's an intense scene. But also
you're close enough, boss.
When Riddler says, "Don't lose your head, Mr. Coulson," as he's trying to say the riddles. Like that's like when you laughed at jokes Heath Ledger's Joker said.
Sure.
Night of like
when he arms the bomb
laugh,
on the
but
neck.
Also,
when the bomb arms, he's like, boop. Like whenever he like audibly does that like arming sound, that gets a reaction.
So I feel like those are two totally different levels of getting a laugh, but those in addition to things that we've already said too.
There are two that I agree with. Those you guys are all naming funny stuff. And I think while we mentioned items that I thought would be answers, I'm like, oh no, we're kind of stepping over this next question. No one's actual answer has been something we already talked about, which I think goes to prove just how much humor is actually in this movie. We mentioned the penguin and the razzolata and bad Spanish type thing. But that whole penguin scene is hilarious, man. From calling them out for not understanding the difference between L and La, from "you guys know I'm still here" to waddling like a penguin when he's tied up. All of that was a scene that hit in the theater both times I've seen it. But it's even more subtle. I think it was kind of hilarious. In the opening scene, second to opening scene, Batman's walking in. Here's the police department, very serious. They don't know what to make of him. All eyes on Batman. Some people don't want him there, blah, 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 blah. But then there's a homeboy that's checking out the corpse, and he's brush. And Batman's just standing there, right? And the dude's circling around the corpse, and he almost runs right into his chest, and he looks up and just goes, excuse me, and then keeps doing his job. Batman's sort of like, I thought that was great. That got a chuckle last night too. So, I didn't want this to be a laugh riot. I didn't want it to be Batman Forever. But like,
even at the funeral scene, like the cop, when he notices Bruce Wayne, he's like, "Hey, Mr. Wayne!" Like
Mr. Wayne.
That's like a weird, awkward moment. There's so many.
And I think you need that to effectively keep an audience willing to go along with the tension. Like, hey, I'm willing to let you mess with me, but can you just like give me a little bit of something here that
a little breather
breaks it up, a little bit of breather. I think it's important.
Yep.
Okay. Last question, because believe it or not, boys, we've been talking for a little while, and I know we want to wrap it up. And I'm going to ask both of you to come back on the program in the near future and talk about this movie more. I want to talk about where we think it's going to go. But I also really think, like, dude, I don't know what you guys think. I could do an hour on Pattinson's performance in the portrayal of Batman. I think we could do an hour on the top story influences that you saw on this movie. I think we can do a number of episodes here. So let's not give this a marathon listener or a marathon listen for the audience. But there's two things I do want to ask about, and they're not people. They're classic elements of Batman. And we can do a double up. So I'll ask you guys to talk about both of them here. I don't think we've seen either of these things portrayed the way they have in live action before, different spins on both. And they're core elements of Batman. So, Ryan Haas, tell me what you think about this Gotham, A, and this Batmobile, B, if you'd be so kind.
Yeah, I really like this Gotham. It definitely has that really interesting juxtaposition of both history and the Gothic architecture and modern things and things that make it feel like a modern functioning city. And a lot of the other movies had different parts of those to varying degrees, but this one feels like it's got the best balance of all those things. And the movie uses that stuff in the movie too. I just love how the world building is all there. How like you have Wayne Manor, the way it was used, and Wayne Tower, and how it is a train station, and the Wayne Terminal that's a private terminal that's unused is the most Gothic one of all, and that's kind of what the Batcave is like. But then you also have more of the slum type areas or the really densely populated. You saw the bodegas getting robbed, and you saw the subway and the trains, and of course the climax of the movie where you got to see like the big what was it, a stadium, like
Gotham Square Garden. I thought, watching him, like, that's where Peter.
It's like a Madison Square Garden kind of thing
type deal.
Yeah, and so you get to see all that stuff and nightclubs that get used, and it's and the mood and the tone is so well done. It feels very comic booky, where you've got the neon, but it's not Joel Schumacher neon. You got rain. You've got the mist, and it just works so well. So the Gotham I thought was great. The Batmobile for a year two Batman, I thought it's hard to beat. And the way that they built up to it, I thought was really clever. You saw there were multiple shots of, you saw the engine was there, or the parts were out. Yep. It was obvious, and the car was covered up at first. They're still working on it. They've got to fix parts of it, and then when it comes out, the engine revs up and the sound is so weird. Like, it was really cool to hear Reeves talk about this on the Dolby podcast a couple of days ago, where he says, like, well, that the whole reason for that is, like, you hear the sound before you even realize it's a car. Like, the reason he does it that way is to kind of freak people out and to like draw attention to it. So like it freaks out Penguin. And so that's why there's that shot of him like looking like, what even is that? So it takes you a minute to even notice that, oh, that weird sound is a car. Oh crap. And then the way it moves, it's a beast. And the sound design, word. It's a beast. And the sound design is so amazing. The way that it moves and functions, and it has the rocket engine on the back too. So, yeah, so I was really happy with both of these, and I'm very excited to see how Gotham continues to get used in the next movie, especially now that we have some sort of a No Man's Land type of vibe going on. That's definitely going to change things.
If the people are out there and they haven't read this comic book, please, it's not a comic book, but if you haven't read this massive storyline,
you got time before the next movie comes out,
and you're gonna need it. It's
like 5 volumes. It's a few omnibuses probably worth of content, and it's also in a novel, Greg Rucka novel, which is really good. So yeah, it's got some No Man's Land stuff, and we haven't even begun to see what Arkham Asylum is going to be like. And of course, every new movie needs a new Batmobile, so I can only imagine that's going to
plenty more to explore. I'm really trying not to jump in and share my thoughts as we go along, because I want to leave some meat on the bone to Lauber before I get into cleanup duty. Ryan, your thoughts? Numero uno, Gotham. Numero dos, Batmobile. What do you got?
Love this Gotham. It felt like a great experience, like an experience. The atmosphere of it all was just. You were in there, and I liked being in Gotham for the movie. I wouldn't want to live there. Let's be very clear on that part. I would not want to live there, but a movie there.
That's a key characteristic of Gotham, right? You should not want to live there.
And I love using the sort of, Gothic atmosphere of it too. I'm glad that he jumped off the tower of the GCPD, for we got a little bit of that, skyline. I don't know if there were gargoyles in that, but it totally could have been. Like, they could have made it. Okay, good.
Yep,
because Batman and gargoyles are just how it's supposed to be.
Peanut butter and jelly.
So loved that. And as for the Batmobile, I mean, I didn't panic when we got the first image of what the Batmobile was going to look like. I was just like, okay, let's see how she plays out in the movie. And I loved how the Batmobile operated. It seemed very muscle car. I do not know cars. I know you put gas in them and you change their oil. So I don't know any specifics of anything, but to me, the way it revved up, like I already said, made me all giddy. And then the way that it took off and how he was hitting the boosters on it and stuff. And Reeves has said that he thought of Christine. And I absolutely, when it's revving up, do you think Christine? And it was Haas, you'd already said it was a beast, and I fully agree. I really liked the Batmobile. I hope that we get another Batmobile chase with this Batmobile too. You can do a totally different kind of car chase in the next one and use the same.
Ryan, leave it for the follow-up episode. We can speculate.
Yeah.
Come on.
This one.
I already have ideas. Okay. Yeah.
As we've been talking, I've been like, ooh, I want to talk about this. Ooh, I want to talk about that's okay, buddy. You know what?
I get
you
all
do
excited.
what everyone. You've got a lot of emotional and relationship equity with me, man. So you can, if you want to talk about it, that's just fine.
I've earned it. All right.
Yeah. For me, I'll start with Gotham. I loved this Gotham. I don't want us to all sound like an echo chamber of awesome, but I'm not going to be negative just to have a little bit more of an interesting listen to the audience. Yeah. I loved it. I really did. I loved how it felt fresh and familiar at the same time. The neon was there, but it was not, the gaslit bright, hot pinks and hot greens neon of Batman Forever or Batman and Robin. It was like a city where the city council quit caring about the number of advertisements and billboards that were taking up this space and just kind of went, they were asleep at the wheel. It was the absentee landlord. And it overtook the buildings, and it's there. It's high tech and it's flashy. It's like Blade Runner, meets, I don't know if 89 is the right reference point, but it's like 70s New York film, Taxi Driver, whatever, meets Blade Runner meets a little bit of Tim Burton-y aesthetic. I thought a lot, actually. There's a number of things from like, that looks like Tim Burton's dreamland. That the penthouse or the apartment in that tower was like, holy crap, Tim Burton would love that thing, just all gothic and creepy and ornate and the whole deal. I loved it. I love that it felt like it was its own place, and it felt consistent even across the different parts of Gotham that we saw.
Yeah.
Like it all felt like it was built upon train tracks or a subway at some point. And it was a city that had been stacked on top of each other, right? Like year after year after year, it built up and kind of sprawled and, failed, and they built on top of it again. Like there's the underground in Seattle. There's obviously like any super old city, New York, there's, multiple layers where they just build up, right? Instead of move. It's all those Roman ruins that are across Europe where they settled, and you just kept building. Like that was rad. And then you get to like sort of out city, what I assume is just outside the city limits. And I think that's probably where the Glasgow filming took place, when they're racing through, these heavy limbed trees and the green grass and the cemeteries and the winding roads and the cobblestone and the brick bridges. Like, oh my God, like it felt so Gotham to me. Felt so, probably the most anything has ever felt like Gotham outside of 89 and the Narrows and Batman Begins, I think for me, that we've seen on screen. And then for the Batmobile, when the initial images came out, Ryan, you're such a polite young man, just a well-reasoned human being. Because I like what you said, you see the promo images, let's not jump to conclusions. I remember when we first saw them and we were in the chat, I think it was me and BOF alumni and Bat brother Justin Kowalski was kind of way out ahead of me. Like that wasn't his jam at all. He wasn't into. He's like, oh, I don't like the way it's a muscle car. And for me, I'm like, ooh, not kind of what I was hoping for. If I had to, make my own Batman movie, and no one has called for me to do that yet, I wouldn't have a muscle car. But then I kind of, so it was like 50% Kowalski, 50% Lauber. I'm like, well, let's see how this works out. And it might be the right thing for the character. And oh man, I love this thing. I love this thing. I love it. It's so awesome.
I wanted to see it more in the movie. Like he does drive it a couple more times after, but I was like, I want more Batmobile.
Well, and I think some of it is the use too, right? Like you talk about, like it's a intimidation tool, and I think it's also tactically used where they're outside the drug deal with Penguin. Catwoman's there for the score; she wants the cash. The twins and old Oz come out, and the guns are firing everywhere. Gordo's there; he's getting shot at. And what does Batman do when he has a chance? Right? Like, do you think this Batman doesn't care about Selina and Gordon? No, he does. But he knows if he goes into this beastly automobile and revs the sun gun up, and you got the sound and the blue flare out, like all eyes are on that. And what happens? Both Gordon and Selina in that instant are able to get to safety. Scares the heck out of people and distracts them. So like tactically used.
And for them to know, awesome. And what's cool about that scene is that, for them to not know what it is, and for the car to have been under construction like during the movie, it makes me think like, is this the first time the Batmobile has been out?
I thought in my mind, I'm like, this is its debut night.
Yeah, exactly.
That kitten purred louder than
exactly.
louder than Lauber's kitten purrs. If this guy sticks around, if this Batmobile sticks around, they want to put a tail fin on it, or maybe a little bit of a thing up front to complete the bat, similar to what was on the motorcycle, something
right,
like that,
exactly.
Up front. Yeah, I'm fine. I don't need anything.
He's like a battering ram.
Yeah, I don't need anything more than that. That could be the Batmobile forever. It could be Batman Year 10, and maybe just tweaks the engine a little bit. All right, let's wrap this one up. I know it's we've got character portrayals and, like I said, storylines that we kind of saw as an influence. I'd love to save that for another episode. Hopefully this was a good, not necessarily a review episode so much as let's talk through some key topics and points, because you've probably listened to a bunch of review episodes by now. This will be up by the weekend, so like second weekend in March. And by then, even more will pop out. So I thought this would be a nice little episode. You enjoyed the movie. You thought it'd be fun to listen to the guys from Batman on Film talk about it, but not serve you up another review episode. There's some really good ones out there. I'm not decrying those. So here's this, and we're going to continue to talk about this for a while. Lauber, how many more viewings do you think you have in store for yourself?
I'm gonna feel the rush to make sure to see it again in IMAX before it stops playing in IMAX.
Until Morbius, probably. That's a few weeks away.
At least, I feel silly for saying 4 down and at least one more, but I feel like I got 2 in the chamber.
I bet you're going to go 2. Haas,
yeah.
And then I'm going to ask one more question. I know we said we're wrapping up. I got one more I have to ask. Haas, how about you?
I've seen it 4 times as well. I feel like I probably would do 2 more. One is because I need to see it in Dolby Cinema and Dolby Atmos, which I've not done yet. And then I also would like to see it in IMAX one more time. Hopefully, going to Tennessee to Knoxville and taking my dad to see it in IMAX. That's kind of
that sounds great.
Hopefully, but would be my last viewing.
Papa Haas.
So yeah, Papa Haas. Yeah, which you guys have seen. He's wearing a BOF shirt.
Yeah,
I've seen it twice. I think I'll see it. I've got a bunch of kids. I should see it like 6 times like you guys. You're
the most adult one here of the 4.
I don't know. You guys hung out with me for a full weekend.
It's kind of a crazy thing. It's like, plus I have that like fever of, it's like, there's no better feeling than being able to just go to the theater and see the Batman movie in the theater.
There's a Batman
like,
movie
hey, there's
theater.
a Batman movie. Why am I not there right now? It's a great feeling.
What a time to be alive. There's a live action Batman movie in the theater right now. Guys, what are we doing in our basements and spare bedrooms? We should be.
Why are we in the theater? Each of us in a theater watching the movie and recording and talking.
We could really annoy some people.
That'd be something. Yeah.
I think I've got probably 2 viewings. If I could sneak in more, I'll try to. It just gets tough with all the stuff, all the hoopla. And then, I'll watch this thing. I mean, I think about it. HBO Max is not that far away. But what I wanted to ask the last question, and then we'll get into you guys plug your stuff. How much of a must see is this movie in IMAX? Because both of my viewings have been in standard theaters. I've had a great seat, and I haven't sat there going like, oh man, standard theater, this isn't so good. But since you've both done it, what is the next level? And how much better is that next level?
I'll say it's a must.
Okay.
If you have an IMAX, have an IMAX close to you,
I do.
Then it's a definite must. And like you just said, Garrett, we saw it at the BOF watch party was on a standard screen. In no way at any time was I like, man, this isn't very good. No, it was good. And then I saw it a couple of days later with some friends in a standard, and it was good. That first, and I know that also it was the first time viewing it was an IMAX, but I mean, IMAX is IMAX. It looks and sounds great. So I highly recommend try and get one viewing in at IMAX.
I will. We got it's fun. The latest showing they have around here, because I have to go to these after I help. A lot of kids got to get them in bed. A lot of activities.
Tuck them in.
The latest showing that I think I saw like right around me within 15 minutes driving was like a 7:30 IMAX start time, which just doesn't. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I'm gonna have to try and hit up an afternoon. Maybe take an afternoon off from work and go see a matinee in the IMAX, because they start at like 1 or I think between there's a 1 and I think a 3 within local distance. Haas, when you saw it in IMAX, does it fill up the whole height of the screen? I imagine it's not all the way tall.
It actually doesn't. This is one of those that I think it was filmed in I have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was filmed in the digital IMAX format. So it was like some other recent Marvel movies too. But it does not actually fill up the entire screen, but it looks great. And like I said, it sounds great. A lot of times, see, I wish I had seen it in Dolby Cinema so I could compare, and that's why it's still on my list. For a movie like this, Dolby Cinema might even be the even better format to watch it in, because it's like watching an HDR movie but in the theater, and the Dolby Atmos is just spectacular. And after listening to the Dolby podcast the other day, they talk about how much crazy stuff that they put into the audio channels, and you can hear a lot of that too. Like, I was very cognizant of at tonight's screening of that sound mix, and I'm very curious to see how much improvement there would be in the Atmos mix. So if you've got either Dolby Cinema or IMAX, definitely go see them both, or see whichever one is more convenient for you, because seeing the movie on a premium format is something you want to do for sure.
Okay. All right. You guys have talked me into it. All right. I got to do it. So I for sure, you know what? I'm going to find a way. If I can do it, I'd want the full. These things don't come around very often, guys.
No,
exactly.
It has an expiration date.
It does. And I'm going to try. This is going to be my goal. We've got Dolby and we've got IMAX. I'd like to see it on both. I said I thought I had 2 more viewings in me. I'm going to try and do one on IMAX, one on Dolby. Okay, guys. Thanks for humoring me with the format talk. I know it's not always
me and Lauber saw it in D-Box.
Yeah, I know you guys are into it. I should say thank you to the listeners. Like, not everybody's tuning in to have a conversation on a movie theater format on a Batman podcast. It's like, give me the Boom Pow Zap, man. I'm not asking for the specs on your Nerd Vision, but I appreciate it because now I know what I'm going to do. Let's plug some stuff and get out of here. Ryan Lauber, I hear you have a podcast. Maybe tell some people about it, and anything else you'd want to do too.
I do have a podcast that is called The Batman Book Club. And both of these gentlemen have been on multiple times. You can find it wherever you find podcasts. You can also follow on Twitter at the Batman BC for upcoming episodes and latest episode drops. The most recent episode was with drops. Yeah, except it's in your ears, not your eyes.
Safer.
The aforementioned Justin Kowalski is the most recent guest for Batman Dark Knight Dark City, a Riddler story, purposely done at this time for this reason. You know what I'm saying?
Smart. Very smart.
And then, you can follow all my stuff on BOF proper. I was actually the most recent guest on the Social Hour with Bill, where we talked all about the Batman and spoiler-ish talk. And you could say that me, Garrett, and Ryan Haas just talked the Batman. Well, Bill and I talked Batman. It's completely different ways of talking about the Batman. So that
was my goal.
It's worth, well done, Garrett. You accomplished this task. So it's worth listening to as well if you want more Batman talk. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Ryan Haas.
Thank you.
You've got a website and probably other stuff to talk about too. What do the people need to know?
Yeah. Follow me on Twitter at SMB_Ryan. SMB stands for Super Mario Brothers Movie Archive website, which you can follow on Twitter at SMB Movie. There's a Sonic movie coming out next month, which I did mention. And so when that first Sonic movie came out, I did like a little mini review for the site. Maybe I'll probably do that for Sonic too. Maybe I'll get throw Nora in, get her thoughts on it, because
do it.
She's a pretty good little reviewer right now. She gave me a good review of Ghostbusters 2 the other day, and it was pretty good. But yeah, so do that, follow those things, and follow that Rob and Everyone Loves the Drake podcast. It's finally back from its hiatus. You can find it at ELTD podcast, and we're getting those episodes up and going again. So do that. And Garrett, I can't believe we did not even mention that unnamed Arkham inmate in this episode.
I know.
We could do a whole episode about that.
I know.
That's ridiculous.
I literally, as we've been going, I typed a couple things here and there of like, listen, we're going to put a bow on this one. But I think, guys, so listeners, what I had talked to the guys about, I've got a couple different ideas planned. One of them is going to be, where do we think this is going? What's going to be in the sequel? Let's get into speculation mode. Let's do a little fanfic. I think before we do that, I want to do a part 2 conversation similar to this and touch on a couple key points. Maybe we'll merge those together, but there's a lot of meat on this bone here, guys. We're going to be eating good for a while. Haas, anything else? I feel like I cut you off on the.
Nope, that was it.
All right. Well, there's plenty to talk about, and you guys know me. I like to talk. And I'd love to keep the conversation going with you, dear listeners. You can follow Batman on Film to get all the updates on the site and new articles. Do that over at The Batman on Film, all one word. You know how Twitter works. And if you just want to chat it up with me, I would love that. I like making friends. I like mixing it up. My Twitter handle is at Garett Wato. That is at GarrettWato. If there's anything you'd like to hear about, maybe you're like, hey, dude, you talked about a bunch of things you might do on more podcasts about the Batman, but you missed this awesome idea. I would love you to email me that awesome idea. And the good news is you can do that. My email address is garett.grev@batmanonfilm.com. That is GARRET.GREV@batman-on-film.com. It's a long email address. Hopefully you remember it. But what's more important to remember, dear listener, is it's not who you are underneath. It's what you do that defines you. Thank you for listening.
You have been listening to the official podcast of the one and only Batman on Film website. On Twitter, follow BOF at Batman on Film and the Batman Podcast Network at BatPod Network. For Jet and everyone at Batman on Film, I'm announcer Rachel. Thanks for listening to the authoritative, definitive, the original Batman on Film.